Hey everybody, it's old folks here. I had a question posed to me, not just through the YouTube page, but also via line and as well in game through the mail. I was sent a couple of letters. And some of the questions that I get asked is, how do we form a strong alliance? How do we continue to get people to come in? If you look right now, we're at 56 of 65. I'm going to scroll down here and I'll show you even no alliance is ever immune to people not being on. Some of our top guys, for whatever reason, and you never know what happens in life, have just vanished. They're level 80 plus. Were dominating weeks ago. They've been gone almost a month and disappeared. Don't know why. Can't tell you, but they're gone. So, you just kind of move on and continue to recruit. And so I want to talk a little bit about leadership. I want to talk a little bit about management of the alliance. Obviously, the lifeblood of doing well in this game is having a good alliance. You want to have strong members. Don't, unless you're just one of those special alliances that has drawn everybody in and they're all the highest guys and, your arena basically is dominated by you guys. I lost again. And, let's go to rankings here. So, look, we currently hold first and fourth, and sometimes I'm first, sometimes I'm second, third, fourth. I usually never go below fourth, but, you'll see we've got a good representation in the top 20 or so. And it's like, how do we bring people in? Well, let me say this first and foremost. Even if you get people into your alliance, how are you going to keep them there? It's one of those things where you got to have some interaction. There's a program called Line, L-I-N-E, that is pretty good for communicating outside of the game. A lot of alliances use that. I've used that on this server as well as on my other one. As the leaders, as the elders, you got to be active. On this server, I'm not the leader. I was for a little bit, but I'm not really the kind of guy that has the time to manage an alliance. Alliance takes a lot of work. You may not think it, but it does. There's all these different events that takes place, when it's time for Kingdom Wars, when it's time for Throne Wars, when it's time for Alliance Wars, when it's time for Magic Squares. There's always something going on, and so you kind of have to stay on top of that. You have to send out letters, say, hey, we need your help. Join in. You can click here and say who's not in here, and say, hey, I'll type one right now because we're here, and send it in, and that's what it is. People go from there. Lots of ways to do that, lots of ways to see it, and it's just kind of one of those things where people don't really realize how much work goes into it. On top of that, you have to stay up with the alliance stuff. I'm constantly directing people. Okay, it's time to focus on the Citadel. Okay, we've got that. Now it's time for the tech. Okay, we got that. Now it's time for the Soul Exchange. So we're 7 of 10, which isn't bad. Some of the guys have already fell out this morning from their short ones, and so we're constantly focusing on that. You're trying to get people to give into the construction tab. And so you're like, okay, guys, we need to get the next amount of stuff in. Obviously, the higher you get, it's not as big. But early on, when you're developing a alliance, it's important. You really need to hit those milestones so you can take those mines and everything. So you got to be able to communicate well. You got to be able to lead well without being overly bossy. Not everybody likes a jerk. Let's just be honest. If you're a jerk, people aren't going to like you. In world chat, you need to be able to recruit, and when you recruit, be a little funny. Don't be like everybody else. Oh, we're looking for somebody to join us. We don't care what VIP. Have some fun with it. Be like, Evolution is recruiting. Sorry, I gotta take my keyboard off. Recruiting level 75 plus active players, and most people stop right there and say, looking to take long walks with them through the remains of our fallen enemies. Just be silly, do stupid stuff. Hey, I want to have fun with kittens. I don't really care, but make it fun so that they see that there's more to it than just the work or anything else. Make it enjoyable for them, and so kind of work through that. As you grow, you're going to struggle. Obviously, Kingdom Wars. We just had Kingdom Wars, and I mean nothing bad against anybody in our kingdom. Outside of a brain fart here, the Scorpion Kings, there's nobody left, and so for us, these guys aren't. We just let them have it just because it doesn't really matter. We let them have it just because it doesn't matter. If we went to war, we would just totally destroy them. And, in the end, you don't know what these allies are going to be for you. So you don't want to be a jerk. Unless your alliance as a whole wants to be a jerk. If you're made up of the best guys, you want to be a jerk, be a jerk. But try and find like-minded people. Really, really work with the other people in the different areas and kind of say, okay, how are we going to split up some of the stuff? How are we going to control certain things? It really doesn't matter if you don't have the people to control these. So there are a lot of things you just have to take into account that way. We currently hold 3. You only get points for 3. Why do we need to split our people out elsewhere? It's just not worth it. Make wise decisions. Pick good leaders. Make your elders be good elders. Don't just give someone eldership just because there's nothing worse than a person who shouldn't be there and get mad and then doing something bad to the alliance. We just had a guy in our alliance who was swayed by another alliance on our server to come join them, and they would make him elder. And so he convinced like 3 or 4 guys from our alliance, hey, come with me, we're going to be better. And I'm like, you're joining from the top alliance, that we were for a while. And I said, you're taking us from here and you're going way down the list. That makes no sense. But I mean, that's what happens. So just kind of play with it, have some fun with it. Remember to send out constant emails, constant reminders, just daily things. Hey, here's where our focus is. Encourage them to be on. If you're going to schedule stuff, let them know, hey, this is the time we're going to do it. Think about outside means of communication like the line chat, and just stuff like that. So if you got any specific questions or things you really want to know or talk about, let me know. Remember, again, this game's supposed to be fun. Each person finds fun in a different way. And if you can't find a way to make it fun for someone else, odds are they're probably not going to stay with you. So good luck. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you have a great day. Talk to y'all later.